Welcome and thank you for joining us today for a realistic approach to transforming IT operations, analytics plus automation plus common sense. My name is Raleigh Gould and I'll be your moderator for today's event. Our featured speaker is Dennis Drogseth, VP of Research at Enterprise Management Associates. Dennis brings over 30 years of experience in various aspects of marketing and business planning for service management solutions. He supports EMA through leadership in business service management, CMDB systems, automation systems, and service-centric financial optimization. Dennis will be concluding his event today by taking your questions. You can log them anytime using the chat functionality located in the left-hand column of your screen. Also, today's event is being recorded, and you will receive a follow-up email tomorrow from Enterprise Management Associates. They'll include the on-demand playback as well as some additional resources. So I encourage you to check that out. And before I hand things over to Dennis, I wanted to thank the webinar sponsor, IBM. And now, Dennis, I'd like to hand it off to you.
Well, thank you, Raleigh, and thank you all for attending. Yes, the title is an interesting combination, realism, transforming IT operations, analytics, automation, and common sense. Probably not a formula you normally see, but one that I feel is more and more critical. And I would say 50 to 60 or so calls a year with deployments and look at how IT operations as well as IT service management and sometimes development are beginning to work together in different ways. I think there are a lot of myths around what's going on as well, so I'll address a few of them, not all of them. We're going to look at the overall landscape briefly, then what are the roadblocks for going forward, and communication kind of zero in as one of the key areas that's problematic in many dimensions. What are the technologies to support those issues and create a fabric in which IT operations and beyond can start to transform and work better? Where analytics and automation really do come together because they don't always very well, and how can you steer the boat in that direction, and what are the proven benefits of going forward with a pragmatic, in the sense, a bottoms-up approach to making things work. Bottoms-up can also lead to a very strong tops-down initiative that's more effective than it would have been otherwise. We see that a lot when we do consulting and conversations, how much dialogue, shared wisdom, and listening actually all play into transforming IT. So we're going to talk to some of these areas. The landscape here is probably nothing new for any of you. Digital transformation, we'll talk to soon more, cloud, agile and DevOps, growing need of analytics, and the rise of mobile. Just a few things here. Digital transformation is not really a magic wand. I don't believe in magic wands except on stage. Nice to see Penn and Teller do digital transformation. That's not how it works in the real world. We're going to see how digital transformation really depends on IT transformation and transforming IT. There are many forms of cloud, which you hear about all the time, crudely defined in terms of private, public, and hybrid, and then legacy. They are not destinations, I will say, in my experience. They're resources to be managed. How are they going to be managed and optimized usually depends on a sort of growing, building capability, an additive capability to bring cloud meaningfully into new environments. The only tweet I ever did about cloud that anyone ever liked, to be honest, not that I tweet very much, is Journey to the Cloud, soon to be a major motion picture about an obscure New Zealand cult. It's not the endpoint of a journey. It's an environment to be optimized. And Agile and DevOps, which I won't spend too much time on today, of course, there's a need for speed, but also the need for relevance, continuity, and governance in making the worlds come together between development, operations, and IT service management and it's not about all being one old-fashioned and one being all about being new. How you bring those together also requires shared bottoms-up learning and wisdom sharing and automation and analytics. We'll talk about analytics more in the call, and of course the rise of the mobile end user. There's a bit of an age difference, but I think overall, even with us older folks, there's more impatience, more expectation, less willingness to put up with just go to the phone and see if we can get something to work for a change. So we did some research, I believe, among the most in-depth research that's been done in the industry late last year on digital and IT transformation. And here's how we define them, of course. You can see why the two are closely aligned. Digital transformation is about transforming the business through digital or largely IT services, whereas IT transformation is directed at optimizing IT in support of business requirements. The two obviously go together, and you don't get there. Again, there's no magic wand coming down from on high that says you get the digital transformation without IT transformation. And when we looked at the groups that we surveyed, this was, by the way, a global survey. So we looked at Asia and Europe and the U.S. And we looked at a lot of business stakeholders as well as IT. We actually got surprisingly common views between the IT population and the business population. Needless to say, more were focused on IT transformation or operational transformation, but we've got a strong 50-50. We got some significant population looking at primarily digital, and a few of them viewed the terms as interchangeable. What I'll say here is that those who were focused 50-50 between the business and IT were the most advanced across the board. And that is a different kind of a conversation that IT is used to. It's a big part of operational transformation. More advanced equals more successful, more shared investments in analytics and technology overall, better process awareness, better best practice awareness, on and on there. Just a little bit of background on the digital before we wrap up there. Most of the transformational initiatives have been over a year then, and so it's not a brand new thing now. They're getting a real history that we can track. The most likely to oversee the total process for IT operations, by the way, and the IT executive suite. And I hear a lot of skepticism at times, and I won't say from where because I'll say that it's from vendors. I don't really hear it much from IT, that, operations is kind of, sinking through the street. It's not that important anymore. It's all about development. It's all about microservices, or who knows what it's all about. But in fact, from my calls and my conversations, and I think what we'll see somewhat in this webinar, indeed, IT operations is more important than ever before, especially if you step back and include IT operations, ITSM as a unified view, and include some of the overlay teams that are becoming more and more important in that role. Relevant here, service availability and performance was the number one operational metric, and as I like to say, you cannot be transformed if the service isn't there. It can't transform you. And improved end user impact and efficiencies, not surprisingly, led in metrics for business outcome. Here's a little bit on the role of cloud, and it is also a part of operational transformation. So if you look at the top and then look at the bottom, you get two different worldviews because, in fact, there are many IT organizations that sort of align with being more progressive and those which are aligned with more hemorrhaging. And there is a lot of hemorrhaging, it's true. So those who are more successful will tend to view cloud as a resource. Those who are less successful will see themselves more battered. Look at the bottom two, more isolated from the business and more disruptive. Cloud's been more disruptive than helpful. But then if you look at some of the qualities here. This is very relevant to what we'll be talking about in the webinar today. Better dialogue. Okay, that's going to be an ongoing conversation, no pun intended. Cloud is forces to reorganize. What that really means, though, is you build up from bottoms up insight and see how things can work, and then often you arrive at conclusions how you're going to do things better. But the siloed way of working, which we're going to talk about, as you know, doesn't really work very well. Looking outside the data center at that distributed internet, public cloud, private cloud universe, transforming, redefining our priorities and metrics, try to be more relevant to the business. All these things are part of operational transformation. So let's look at some of the core roadblocks going forward. This is some very recent research and actually focused more on optimizing IT for value and cost efficiencies. But this is a long list. In fact, let's see how long it is. It's up to 10. And it goes on and on. These are the top 10. There's a common thread throughout. So look at number 1 is operational inefficiencies. That was number 1 challenge. And then you look down, if you look down to 9, can't measure operational inefficiency. There's no risk history there. So the two there are very aligned. And then you look at number 10, which is actually also about operational inefficiencies, communication and process issues. And you'll see those take top of the line when it comes to digital transformation. Moving up from the bottom, fragmented technologies due to silos. And if you look at 3, fragmented technologies in general, once again, all part of operational inefficiencies. Low levels of automation, really key to getting automation in gear to support operational performance. Data sharing is also a big issue. Data quality, you'll see right above there. And that gets back into fragmented technologies and a lack of process for sharing information and analyzing it. So you'll see here that digital transformation hit on the number 10, communication and process issues. That was top of the list. But again, it's really operational efficiencies that we're talking about with warring and siloed tool sets. And we've also documented in many cases, the fragmentation from just so many tool sets. In very recent research we did at Optimizing IT, we saw an average of 11 different inventory and discovery tool sets focused actually more in the ITAM area. That was average per respondent. And then an average of 15 hours a week trying to reconcile data from all those different sources. Not a very healthy environment. Monitoring can be a lot worse. And in one mid-tier environment, I actually talked to someone who I won't name the company. They were only a mid-tier company. They were based in Europe, and they estimated they had 300 different monitoring tools between different geographies and different IT environments. So how do you work across all that fragmentation? A little more sort of perspective from our dialogues, and I'm going to share a number of those with you here. Here I think we're going to see silo a lot in these quotes and the struggle against silos. And here I think the phrase that's key at the bottom, redundant and even conflicting ways of working. Redundant and conflicting. I'm sure none of you have experienced that in your IT organization. The next is one of my favorite quotes. I've used it more than once. We get tasked by free association. I love the term. It shows what happens when a lot of individuals who might be quite bright in their own way, stuck with separate tools, no common processes, no ways of working together. And then a mid-tier financial planning group, also siloed, hadn't invested in any best practices. We'll talk about that, by the way. Best practices don't have to be legislated from a hymnal, so to speak. They can evolve, again, from a bottoms-up approach and work with ideas that come from many different sources. And there, of course, the critical quote at the bottom, most of our change records resided in someone's head. So if they weren't sick that day, there was no record of knowing what to do. These next quotes are specifically from our consulting little root cause analysis, not really fixing the components, tribal knowledge, I'm sure that has cropped up in some of your environments, and each silo defines its own process. If you look at the bottom line, I think the key there is no end-to-end process, no consistent way of really doing something. It's all kind of hit or miss. More deeply into issues of communication, which are really at the center of a lot of these problems. So communication issues based on at least my dialogues are pervasive. I talked to one environment where the CIO described IT as, and I hope you forgive me for saying this, he described it as a goat rodeo. This is an apt description, sadly, when there is no really good communication and process definition. It's the second top obstacle, as we saw in digital transformation. It can impact efficiency, morale, and service delivery, and it does require communication across operations silos, as well as between operations teams and their owners. And as you can see, knowledge capture, sharing historical insights, and applying common sense collaboration can be key. And I think when we look at issues of communication, one thing that comes to mind, in our consulting experience, for major deployments, we required 20 stakeholder interviews so we could understand what their priorities were. And so I'm going to say listening is a big part of communication as well as telling. When we went to a CIO who said, no, you don't need to do that. I just sent an email out last week. You don't need to interview anyone. We insisted. We did the 20 interviews. And when he came back, he asked us if we could do 20 more. Because by listening and sharing the wisdom we got from those conversations, he'd learned more than he'd learned about his organization since he took office. More quotes on communication. I have probably about 6 hours of those. I won't put them all here. Lost in the cascade, especially if it's sort of top down and never gets to bottoms up. Very ad hoc, and that is pretty common. The two quotes on the right are interesting and fun. Same group, same IT organization, but two perspectives when we actually sat down with these people. We understood where they came together. One thinking it was good, one thinking it was brutally bad. Both were somewhat right, although it wasn't really that good. And here are a few other quotes more about resolution versus tribal knowledge. Again, if it's in someone's head, it's not documented, it's not shared, there's no knowledge base. That is a problem. If processes cannot be defined, that's a problem. And then over-promising and not following through. Let's look at how analytics and automation can help solve problems in the technology front. When we did our digital transformation research, we saw that, and I was a little surprised, even though I'm working in technology, almost everyone, actually there was a faint 1% that didn't think it was relevant. 27% thought it was supportive, and 73% viewed technology investments as a driver to digital and IT transformation. And the business community and the IT community surprisingly aligned very closely on maybe just a few percentage points of difference on this point. So what are the key technologies here in digital and IT and operational transformation? If you look at the first on analytics and automation, you'll see automation at the top and automation at the bottom, just above functional priorities. So automation is kind of a sandwich, and then 3 analytic priorities. Workflow and config automation, and then IT process automation, all got high marks. Analytics for incident problem, analytics for governance, and analytics for application infrastructure optimization and performance, all right in the middle. And they all really fit together, not just a sandwich. It really is a single dish that needs to work together. In terms of functional priorities, overall, optimizing the consumer value in terms of internal users and external users, Application performance is right up there because that won't happen without good application service performance. And then project management, which, by the way, doesn't have to always be legislated from, again, on high. It can be a bottoms-up process of knowledge sharing, and then enhanced automation for self-service. That can be both within IT, but also between IT, of course, and its consumer and stakeholders. So the point here is you need to look beyond one silo, and I think the first thing to see is how closely aligned all the top 5 at least are. Not that much difference. Network, systems, storage, data, and then of course data quality pervasive, security pervasive. Applications are actually divided. They probably would have been higher, except we looked at cross-domain service, then we looked at response time in different perspectives, and middleware issues. And then at the bottom, you get interesting requirements. Delivering new application services, really key. Managing an extended enterprise, and efficiencies in optimizing cloud. One thing to keep in mind in looking at these percentages is the question asked was, what are you currently measuring? Now, this is not an answer necessarily, and it may explain why some of the, such as delivering new application services didn't get such high marks. Didn't ask, what would you like to be measuring, or how would you like to be measuring it? The bottom line, again, is we've got to work across silo. We've got to bring this together. We've got to accelerate across all these different environments. So, again, that gets down to IT process efficiencies, meaning that very cross-domain story, IT, and then operations and IT service management. I've done a lot of work in this area looking at the need to operationalize IT service management and vice versa, to bring governance and process efficiencies into operations by investment in advanced ITSM capabilities. And I just want to say that the commonality here, looking at this slide, what was ITSM's perspective? Number one, that they wanted this was their strategic goals based on also recent research, improving end user experience overall, same aligned with digital and operational transformation. But then look at the next two. Better integrations with operations for incident problem and availability, integrations for workflows for operations for change. These are the core of what we're talking about today, and they really need to come together. They can bring big value when ITSM and operations teams really do work together and have the fabric to do so. And not surprisingly, top ITSM analytics priorities, and they do care about analytics, for incident problem and availability management. When we looked at what was being measured again, and this again is what are you currently measuring, not what would you like to measure, I think you can see strong, the grouping at the top is very high about availability and performance. You can call it mean time to resolve incidents, mean time to repair, the war room issues. Then problem owners, understanding who owns things and mapping that out is really key. And first call resolution down kind of in the middle, all really about getting the performance and triage and incident management up there. Change and impact is also key because performance and change, as you know, are very closely aligned. And then key for software audits, security compliance we could talk about, and we are doing research on security and operations integrations and the challenges there. And then, once again, OpEx efficiencies in delivering application services, et cetera. So, in summing up, why analytics and automation need to go hand in hand, enable faster, better, more collective insight. Automation helps to accelerate the benefits from those insights. And pragmatic knowledge sharing can help to inform both. And changes impact how IT works and how this has to be done gradually. Now, I'll say one thing. Not every analytics initiative is done pragmatically, and sometimes it's done with just bringing a lot of data together and hoping for the best. And there's no sense of common sense, there's no sense of use case, there's no sense of priority, and really no direct handshake with good automation. That's a lot of what I saw was a problem in many CMDB deployments. Yeah, just let's bring all that data together in one place and hope for the best. That really is not how it works. Use case is key. Pragmatism is key. One step at a time is key. So what are the proven benefits of going forward with a pragmatic approach? And again, based on my conversations and dialogues, I would say all these things really come true, borne out. Reduced mean time to repair and progressive levels of automation can accelerate that. Improved operational efficiency is something we talked about quite heavily in the webinar. Improved service availability and performance, and better customer experience, including internal as well as external. Gradual evolution of how IT works and evolves, and best practice optimization across IT through documentation, commentary, automation, and finally, associative team building. All those things are really stepping stones to going forward. Best practices, I mentioned briefly that they don't always have to come from sort of a lightning bolt in the sky. They can come from shared wisdom, and really, on most occasions where I've seen them succeed, they're a combination of both. They're handshakes between shared wisdom and knowledge shared in various environments. When we got the research behind this slide, we also looked at best practices here range from IT Balanced Scorecard and Six Sigma to COBIT to ISO 919770 for IT asset management. And of course, ITIL figured strongly as well, IT infrastructure library. There's a breadth of choice, but dialogue and bottoms-up conversations are what's required if any of these best practice approaches are going to work. And you can see their productivity goes forward, IT service quality goes forward, reduced cost goes forward, relevance, something that's kind of more of a top-down concern, but how are services used? You want to get them out there quickly. Are they really of value? What are they doing? Improved agility and responsiveness, better dialogue, better business outcomes, and better collaboration within IT groups. Wrapping up with just a couple of quotes here, where we've seen good bottoms-up, and sometimes bottoms-up and tops-down, but bottoms-up is also key, always key. Reduced mean time to repair for context, for understanding where to look. And if you look in the next quote on the right, by the way, you'll see the word context as well. Contextual value in bringing people together is so central, and technologies that can do that are so central. And then our initiatives helping us blaze a trail to deliver better trust and confidence. That is also really key. But one thing I'd like to mention on the quote on the right, I love the phrase, a data democracy that's informing that context, where you have role-based, flexible access to the data. And then finally, new ways of IT evolving and new ways as groups that were not working together are starting to, because they can share data and insight. And just a quick wrap up. Again, our sponsor will not be presenting. Just want to say that I've looked very closely at the IBM alert notification and runbook automation, and it does fit a lot of these qualities in terms of providing opportunities for sharing data, automating, and providing analytics appropriate to accelerating decision making across various groups and roles, including a wide group in operations and ITSM. If you want to know more, please look for the white paper where I examine this in more depth in our library. IBM rolls out IT Smart Solutions. And now, Raleigh, I'd like to turn it over to you for Q&A.
Great. Thank you, Dennis. We'll spend a few moments on the Q&A portion. Before we dive in, I did want to also direct your attention to these additional IBM resources. I will include them in the follow-up email along with that white paper. So I hope you check that out. Jumping right into the questions, Dennis, the first one is, transforming IT methodologies is often viewed by many in our organization as cool to talk about, but quickly becomes overly ambitious. What do you recommend we do to prevent or avoid this?
Right. Okay. So I talked a lot about that bottoms-up dialogue. Overly ambitious is usually legislated from on high without listening or hearing what's really going on. I can't tell you how often that may happen. I won't, however, say that executive buy-in is not important. It's critical often, but it really requires bottoms-up dialogue, documentation, good investment in technologies to enable that, and a use case priority, one step at a time. Let's not do it all at once. What's our top priority? Where do we share the most pain? How do we go forward?
Great. Thank you, Dennis. Let's take another question. You mentioned Agile DevOps only briefly, but not much afterwards. Can the strategies you're putting forward in terms of technology and process also support Agile and DevOps requirements?
Absolutely, and I've seen that happen increasingly. Often there will be a model view where you can do pre-deployment as well as deployment and look at outcomes, shared workflows, and again, shared analytics can be brought together. And it's an area that, again, there's a lot of myth about this that, there'll be a Disneyland in the future where development will just do it all perfectly, somehow looking at microservices and containers. This is not what I've seen, and even in environments where those apply, what's required is an additive, shared knowledge that, again, works in building a community where there's common sense of how to do things and a common context for how to do things.
Thank you, Dennis. Let's take one final question. It is, you spoke a lot about communication, but our organization doesn't really share information very well. What is some advice you'd give about how to go from A to B in a communication void?
Well, it usually takes a game changer willing to work with good technologies. I guess that's the sad truth. But what the game changer needs to do is to promote an environment of dialogue and listening. And I'm going to underscore listening with 3 underscores in bold letters. But it also, of course, requires bringing in some priorities. Again, that one step at a time approach. Once you get IT individuals across silos to listen to each other and share knowledge, you've really started to bridge that A to B challenge. Yeah, my favorite quote there is someone from National Institute of Science and Technology Standards, right? And they were talking about a deployment and somebody who was resistant, and he said, I believe in standards as long as they're mine. Well, that is a common mindset. You hear that metaphorically at least a lot, and listening and sharing really needs to be the next wave.
Great. Thank you, Dennis, for that insight. And I wanted to thank our audience for taking time out of your schedule to join us today. I do hope that you will check out the email that will be sent tomorrow. Again, it will include the on-demand playback, a PDF of the slides, the white paper Dennis mentioned, and it will include these IBM URLs. Thank you again for joining us, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, Raleigh. Thank you all.